Hello everybody, thank you very much for joining me today for another Twilight Zone video in my Twilight Zone ranking series where I rank every episode of the original Twilight Zone from my least favorite to my favorite. Today I'm going to be talking about number 107, Dust, written by Rod Serling and directed by Douglas Hayes. This is a season 2 episode and there will be episode spoilers. So now we're kind of getting into episodes that I like for the most part. I would say I would consider them slightly above average. They're not my all-time favorites and I don't think they're series classics, but they're pretty good episodes that I think are worth watching. I will say, though, that I think Dust is one of those episodes that gets a mixed reception, and I can understand why, and I'll try and explain that as I go through my review. So Dust is about a young man who gets intoxicated, and he accidentally kills a child, and he's set to be hanged for it. There's also a sheriff, a peddler, and the boy's father, all involved in the plot. This is a Western-themed episode, and it's a very dreary Western. This is definitely not a happy episode until I guess you could argue maybe the ending. The acting is pretty solid throughout. Vladimir Sokolov as the father, John Larch as the sheriff are both good, but it's really Thomas Gomez as the shady peddler Sykes who really makes this an episode worth watching in my opinion. His performance here is really good. So what happens is this peddler comes into town and he's really giving this young man who, accidentally killed this child a really hard time. And the guy, the boy's father also pleads with the parents of the young girl, but they don't want to hear about it, even though he wants mercy for his son. Now, I can understand the father's plea in his position, but I can also understand the parents' position as they just lost a young child, which is really, really awful. It's one of those things where it's not a good situation for anyone. The sheriff is also kind of an okay character that he does have some sympathy for the whole situation, but it doesn't seem like there's really much he can do about it. Now, although I don't think the characters in and of themselves are necessarily that interesting, I think the way they're used within the situation is interesting as we get to see different points of view, which I thought was kind of a unique take on the episode. I appreciated that. So then what happens is the episode picks up a bit, and the peddler decides he's going to trick this boy's father because he knows the man is desperate and he'll do anything. He picks up some dirt off the ground and tells the guy that it's magic dust, even though we know it's not. It's just regular dirt. So the father basically buys into this and gets the dust from the peddler. So this is where things really get interesting. So we go to the actual site of the hanging, and the father comes by and starts like sprinkling the dust all around, really believing that it has magical powers. And the rope breaks, so his son is spared. And the parents of the young girl decide that this is a sign, and they basically let it go. So the father and son leave together. Also, the peddler is in shock. He doesn't really get it. He says this was just dirt, but eventually he comes around to the fact. He says it must have been magic dust, and it seems like he has a new perspective on things as well. So all this part at the end is a little melodramatic, maybe a little over the top. I mean, this gentleman is actually just sprinkling dust all around. It's one of those episodes that has really no science. You just have to believe that the father's belief is what saved his son. I think it'll either work for you if it does or it doesn't. It did work for me, even though it's not my favorite type of plot ending in the world, because I think there's a sincerity to the father character that made it work for me. But if it doesn't work for you, I can also understand that. You also have to buy into some other things. Like, would the peddler really have changed this whole perspective that quickly? Maybe it's possible, also maybe not. Like I said, it's one of those things you either just kind of go with or you don't. So for me, Dust is a slightly above average episode that I thought overall mostly worked for what it was trying to accomplish. As always, feel free to leave me a comment on this episode, Dust, if you thought I ranked it too high or too low, or if it was just about right. As always, thanks for your support and thanks for watching.